Hey everyone. Okay, so in Unit 4.2, we are looking at Diana, or I should say Unit 4 altogether, who is, they give you a list of her symptoms, and after you would just Google them and look it up online for PLTW, you end up finding out that she is, in fact, an end stage renal disease. Somebody that's in end stage renal disease, they have lost, they're about 90% kidney function loss. So, what happens when your kidney starts shutting down is that all of that waste that should be excreted through that organ ends up just building up in your blood, and obviously becomes toxic when you can't get rid of it. And so, those people, just in order to survive, need to be put on dialysis. So, the more extreme or severe that the renal failure is, the more often the person will have to go in for dialysis. And essentially, all that is hooking up a machine to them. And generally, they have a PICC line in their arm, but they hook them up to the machine, takes their blood out, cleans it out for them, and then puts it back into the bloodstream or into the body. So it's kind of like an artificial kidney in the form of a machine. The kidney, as we were saying, is an excretory organ, so it gets rid of all the different wastes. Kidneys, have ureters and then the bladder and urethra. So when that blood comes in, it filters things out, and then obviously it exits the body in the form of urine. Urine gets rid of excess water and waste that would have been cleaned out through the kidney. The nephron is the functional unit of the kidney, and that's regulating the composition of the blood in the urine. Through filtration, it secretes it, it reabsorbs it. So each kidney has about 1 million different nephrons in it. They're the tiny little filtering units. And so remember that we're not just filtering it out as it goes through all the parts of that nephron. It's going to clean it out, and then it's going to secrete things through those membranes. Some gets passed into urine and then taken down into the bladder to be excreted through the body. Some things need to be reabsorbed when you start looking at all of your sodium, potassium, chloride ions. That stuff needs to be reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. But when the kidney's not working properly, it's usually because it's not filtering things out, and then waste products are going to build up in the bloodstream. So once you hit that end stage ESRF, end stage renal failure, we're looking, 80 to 95% of the function of that organ is lost. Some of the levels that, if you go in for a physical as you get older and they start drawing blood or taking urine samples, well, there's indicators in there for kidney function. And one of them would be the BUN. And so this is looking at waste buildup in the bloodstream. So when you digest your food, obviously that goes into your bloodstream and is absorbed. And then we need to get rid of the waste after the food is broken down. That is what this level is going to be looking at. So I don't remember what Diana's level was, but if this is high, this is indicating that something in the kidney is not working right because there's too much waste in the bloodstream. Another thing that can trigger this one is if you are severely dehydrated, or if there's an issue with the heart. The blood creatinine levels, again, this is a normal waste product that's found in the blood. This one comes from just muscle wear and tear. So, it's normal to have these levels in there, but the kidney then should clean it out. So as you go and you run a marathon or you do a heavy lifting session, lots of landscaping out in the yard right now, you're going to have all of that muscle waste break. As the muscle breaks down, there's that waste product that builds up, but then the kidney should be getting rid of it. So if your kidney's not working, then you've got a high creatinine level. Diana was high, so that's again indicating that kidney function is off. Blood potassium, this is one of those, all of your different electrolytes that you have in your system and keeping those in balance. When you're dehydrated, what do they tell you to do? Go and drink something with um, different electrolytes in it. Drink a Gatorade to get back in there. The kidney should remove any excess electrolytes. So if all of a sudden we start having high sodiums, potassiums, chlorides, different what's the other one that's in there? But if any of those are off or high, again, it's because the kidney is not cleaning out. As far as a red blood cell goes, the kidneys make the erythropoietin, that's a great word, which stimulates the bone marrow to make red blood cells. And your red blood cells are what carry oxygen to your organs. So if all of a sudden you become anemic, that's because you have a low red blood cell count. Well, what's causing that anemia? It could be kidney function loss. So if the kidneys aren't producing that normal protein, then it's not going to stimulate the red blood cell production. And when then that falls low, then you become anemic. So it all could, again, go back to the kidney function. Person would be short of breath, muscle fatigue early on, and that's just because your organs and muscles aren't getting the oxygen that they need. You look at the glomerular, so the glomerulus is part of that nephron, and the filtration rate. And this one's looking at like speed. So you've got the glomeruli in there to filter the blood plasma, but if it's doing it too slow, that means that the sludge is just building up in there. Okay. And so when it doesn't filter fast enough, you've got that creatinine building up, which is the waste. And it's just not, so it's basically looking at, yes, we know this is a filtration process inside the kidney, but it's just not happening fast enough. Okay, so you want that to be in check. And because Diana's kidneys compromised, she was low. And we want normal range to be 90 to 120. She's at 13, so she's really struggling on that filtration rate. A urinalysis, this is taken from a urine sample. There's several things that we can check here. You can check, well, first of all, the presence of red blood cells is going to be an issue. That indicates, that there's some type of kidney issue going on. Anytime there's blood in the urine, it's not a good thing. White blood cells, obviously, this is indicating that there's an infection somewhere. You would probably see bacteria also. If somebody gives a urine sample that's super cloudy, that's usually an indicator that there's bacteria or a high white blood cell count in there. If you have a bladder infection, a UTI, those are all different types of infections that you can have with this. So some people are more prone to them. A urinary tract infection, that's what I was trying to come up with. So, something in the urethra, inside of there, if bacteria gets in there. Little kids are often really prone to this, females especially. Albumin is the presence, early indicator of a kidney damage. If we can't separate it out of the blood and get it absorbed back in. So what they do here is they take a look at albumin and they compare it to a creatinine, and it's like a different ratio that they look at. Albumin is a normal protein that your body should have, but you want it to be reabsorbed. So if that's all of a sudden being excreted in the urine, there's something wrong with the kidney that's not reabsorbing that protein and taking it to where it needs to go. On Diana's chart, they looked at blood pressure. So high blood pressure indicates the retention of extra fluids. So if your kidney's not functioning right, all of a sudden you have all this sludge going through your bloodstream. That in turn is going to increase your blood pressure. So blood pressure for Diana, I don't know that I would say she was super high. 140 over 90 doesn't seem too bad. But again, as she progresses in the renal failure, that blood pressure is probably going to be seen to go up. At the end, they checked her for an EKG, which is looking at her heart function. So her EKG results were normal, but that would be done just to rule out that it's not something else. So saying that, yes, we can say this is her kidney function because of all these tests, it's not indeed her heart because sometimes they overlap or disguise as each other. They may go on to do some renal imaging to see if there's any blockages or looking at the structure of the kidney that would be able to be seen on ultrasound if they did a CT. I knew a little girl one time that had, when the tube came out the side of the kidney, rather than going down to the bladder, it would go up. And so it was kind of like it was twisted, and they had to go back in and reattach it and have it empty in the right way. When I worked in Nuke Med, we would scan kids. We would put them in front of a camera. They had to sit on a chair, and then we would put a catheter in them, and we would not inject, but we would basically fill up their bladder with a radioactive saline. And so they'd be sitting in front of this camera, and we're watching this bladder fill up. And we were looking for reflux because sometimes when little girls get lots of urinary tract infections, it's because there's reflux or the backflow of urine going back up those urethras, or I should say ureters, sorry. And so then they're prone to lots of infections. And so these little girls would sit there, and all they know is that they have to go to the bathroom because their bladder's full, but we're telling them to hold on until we can fill that bladder full enough that it would actually reflux and go backwards up towards the kidneys. And because it was a radioactive saline put in there, then you could see it on the camera because the camera is a detector for radioactivity, so you could see that live image actually happening. Lastly, they would probably take a look at biopsies if needed, just to see if, on CT, all of a sudden they see a mass in that kidney that shouldn't be there. They're probably going to go in with a needle and take a sample, a biopsy sample, and then look at the pathology behind that to see exactly what's going on. So again, all of this, you know, she's suffering because she's in that end stage renal disease. PLTW does a pretty bad job of, oh my gosh, she's got all these symptoms and boom, she's already there. They would have known that beforehand. Um, we actually had a lab, one of our labs, oh gosh, 7 years ago, passed away. All of a sudden went into kidney failure, and they think it was like she picked up a leptospirosis or something, but the symptoms were just horrible. Really, really bad breath that you could smell. Their urine, when she would urinate, is really cloudy and just full. You can see that it's full of waste that should have been filtered out in the kidney and, taken back into the bloodstream, and rather it's in their bloodstream. They feel terrible. They can't move very well. So they've got lots of aches and pains on top of it. These people are pretty sick. And so they're going to be put on this dialysis machine, but that's just kind of a temporary fix until they can get them to the point of getting a kidney transplant. And so that's what we'll be looking at next is, how does that start? So obviously she's at 90 some percent renal failure. She's going to be put on the list, and then the list for kidney transplant is unfortunately very long. And some of these people, sit in dialysis for years at end just waiting to get that match for their kidney transplant. So we'll be taking a look at that. That's our next step.